Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. We are going to start off with verse 257. We had left off at verse 256, which is the famous verse of the chair, the Kursi verse, the Ayatul Kursi. And in that verse, we had been introduced to the persona of God and how best we can know about Him. So, this verse, which is verse 256 of Surah Baqarah, is one of the most comprehensive introductions to the personality of God. So we start off now with verse 257. It says, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumat ila an-nur والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. If they want to be guided, God helps the believers. He leads them from the vastness of darkness to light. On the other hand, it is the devils which help the disbelievers. They lead them from light to the vastness of darkness. It is these who are the inmates of the fire. They shall abide in it forever. So, viewers, as you can clearly see, that this verse of the Quran tells us that how the law of God works regarding providing light and darkness and leading people from darkness into light or leading them away from light into darkness. So the Quran says that as far as people are concerned who are believers, who would like to be guided, who remain on the straight path, who give due importance to their innate guidance, they are the ones whom the Almighty guides and takes them, and it's literally like taking up them by their hands, holding them by their hands, and then leading them into lightness. And on the other hand, we have people who are those who have stuck to their evil ways. They have not at all given significance or importance to the innate guidance that they might have had, or they have, in fact, and they continue to dwell on their inner ways. So the Quran says that these are the people whom the devils, they grab them by their hand and they lead them from lightness into darkness, and they are the inmates of hellfire. So, a point of caution here that has to be understood is that it is a person's own doing, a person's own deeds, and a person's own effort which are responsible for his fate. And he should not complain to the Almighty if he ends up in hell, if he ends up in the ignominy of hell, because it is not something which the Almighty had driven him to. It was personally and basically his own choice, his own evil deeds, which took him to this drastic failure. So the Quran says, in now another example is to be given, and that is, Alam tara ila allazi hajja Ibrahim fi rabbihi an atahu Allahu al-mulk إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. And if you want to understand this, there are several examples that illustrate this. Have you not seen the person who argued with Abraham about his Lord because God had bestowed sovereignty upon him? At the time when Abraham said to him, My Lord is the one who gives life and death. He replied, I too can give life and death. Abraham at once remarked, Listen, then God brings out the sun from the east, you just bring it out from the west. So, hearing this, that disbeliever of the truth was totally confounded. And in reality, God never guides such unjust people. So, this is the example of the Almighty leading a person from darkness into light. And the example is the example of Abraham having this conversation with the king of his times, Nimrod was his name. And he was trying to make Nimrod understand that as far as sovereignty is concerned, as far as actual power is concerned, it rests with God. And it is God who gives life and death. That is what Abraham said to the king. But that king said, Well, I am a bigger God. It's not God of Abraham who gives life or death. It is my God who gives, it is myself who gives life and death. And this could have been a point in which Abraham could have replied to him and told him that, well, how could you have created someone? How could you have given death to someone? And this could have been a point of dispute between the two, and it would have lingered on the conversation. But look what Abraham did. He changed the subject totally, and he brought up a subject. He brought up a topic. He brought up an example in such a profound way that, as the Quran says, Nimrod had no answer to it. The Quranic words are فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ, which means that the person who had disbelieved, this Nimrod, he was taken aback. He was dumbfounded. He couldn't reply. And Abraham just asked a single question. He said, well, if you think that you are God, we know that the sun always rises from the east. So if you are God, why don't you make the sun rise from the west? Because, of course, being God, you can do whatever you like. And this is something that is in your power and control. But what happened was that the disbeliever, as the Quran says, Nimrod, he had no answer. And the words used are فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ, that the disbeliever could not have an answer. And since he could not have an answer to Abraham's argument, he just turned away. And of course, that would mean that he did not want to continue with the debate, and he just withdrew. And then the Quran says, Wallahu la yahdil qawm al-zalimin, that in reality, God does not guide such unjust people. So this is an example. Remember the previous verses, they told us that there are two types of people. One to whom God guides, who are guided by God and are brought from darkness into light. And another who are brought into darkness from light. So both are these types of people. So now we have this instance in which how people who are living or dwell in light, they are brought into darkness. And this is the example of Nimrod. So right after it, we have another example, which is the opposite one, and which is the one in which we can clearly see that there is a very profound example of how people who are in darkness, or they are wandering in darkness because of the fact that they have the quest for truth in them. They would like to know what the truth is. So the Almighty guides them to the truth, and He creates such situations that these situations guide people, they direct them to what truth and righteousness is. And one thing that is important here, dear viewers, is that as you go along studying the Quran, as you go along studying Surah Baqarah, as we are just doing so, things, the way they are presented in a way that there is always a basic flow of verses in which there is one single theme that might emerge, and from that theme, a dominant idea could emerge from the next topic. For the next topic, and this would go on and on. So it's like a seminal idea, a germinal idea being found in one section of verses and then being developed in the next ones. And this is a very apt example. So we know the previous verses said that Allahu waliyul lazina amanu, that God is the friend of the believers. يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, He takes them from darkness into light, obviously referring to the fact that the darkness of not being guided is something which the Almighty, when He sees that His people have the quest for truth in them, they really would like to enter the truth and adopt the truth, acquire the truth, side by the truth, He makes provisions to bring them to truth. And that is precisely what has happened here. On the other hand, as this discourse moves along, we will now see an example which is the reverse, and that is how people who are wandering in darkness, or they're wandering to find what the truth is, they are given this light. So this basically, this journey from light into darkness or darkness into light is something which is portrayed, and this seminal idea, this germinal idea, which was found in the previous two verses, is now expressed in the following and succeeding verses in the form of two examples. So we've just studied one of those examples, and now we come to the next one. It says, أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أنى يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعد يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. Or is the example of that person who passed by a city which had fallen on its roofs. So, fallen on its roofs obviously means that the roofs had been raised to ground and it was totally grounded, level to the ground. So, and he remarked with wonder, after being destroyed in such a way, how can God give life to it? So the words are, Anna yuhyi hadhihi Allahu ba'da mawtiha. How can God give life to such a city which has been raised to ground? So what happened was, فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ ثُمَّ بَعَثَ. Thereupon God made him die for 100 years and then brought him back to life. So that person who was expressing this wonder was made to die and he was brought to life after 100 years. And thereupon God made him die for 100 years and then brought him back to life and asked him. So go ahead. This is God asking that person, Kala kam labist. How long did you stay in this state? And what he replies is, Qal labistu yawman aw ba'da yawm. I would have stayed for a day or a part of it. So remember what the Almighty has said, that this person who was wondering that what had happened to life after death, or how can life after death be possible, he was given death for 100 years. The Quran says, فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ آمٍ. For 100 years, he was given death. And then summa ba'asa. He was once again raised to life. And when he was asked, he did not realize that he had been dead for 100 years. What he did realize was that perhaps a day or part of the day had passed on. So that is what he replied. لَبِسْتُ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْدَ يَوْمٍ. At this, the Almighty said, بَلْ لَبِسْتَ مِئَةَ عَامٍ. No, in fact, you were in this state for 100 years. 100 years. And what has happened during these 100 years? Now, just look at your food and drink. They have not rotted. In this 100 years, the Almighty did not allow your food to rot. On the other hand, take a look at your ass. How we bring it back to life so that you can become certain that this city will be brought back to life, and so that we make you a sign of hope for people, and observe how we raise the bones and then clothe them with flesh. So basically, this is what the person who had made this observation, that only for a few days did he die, God said that look at the food that you have. فَانْظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِكَ وَشَرَابِكَ. The food and the drink that is right in front of you, they have not rotted. I mean, they are the same, in spite of the fact that 100 years have passed. So in spite of 100 years passing, the food and the drink that are around you, they are exactly the same. On the other hand, the donkey that he owned, it had died. And God said, look, now I'm going to bring it back to life. And not only that, لِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. I will make it an example before people and before you. وَانْظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِكَ وَانْظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا لَحْمًا. And not only that, it will be these bones of the dead animal, they will be clothed with flesh. كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا. They will be brought together. ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا. And then they will be made a sign and they will be clothed with flesh. I mean, it's like becoming a normal living being. When in this manner the truth became manifest to him, فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ قَالَ أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Now, we know from the Bible, or perhaps some of the previous scriptures, that it was Hizkiel, the prophet Hizkiel, whose observations are presented here. So basically, it was his vision that he saw that is presented here in the Quran. And as far as this vision is concerned, we have a very similar vision also found in the Bible. So I'm just going to read out that part of the Bible. So this is the book of Hizkiel, chapter number 37 and verse 1 to 10. So this is Prophet Hizkiel. The land of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth from among them, and I saw a great many bones, and on the floor of the valley bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? I said, O sovereign Lord, you alone know. Then he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath into you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe into these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he, which means of course God, commanded me, and breath entered me. They came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord. Then I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. So this whole passage from Ezekiel chapter 37 verses 1 to 14 tells us how the Almighty went about demonstrating that he can bring people to life. And this is one of the greatest pitfalls that human beings have encountered in their journey to faith ever since time immemorial. This problem of death and how a person can rise after death. How is it possible that once a person's bones decay and decompose, how at all is this possible? So, in this observation of Hizkiel, the prophet Hizkiel, that we have seen in the Quran, and something similar that we have seen in the Bible as well, shows how the Almighty, in front of him, in front of his own prophets, made this demonstration. He made a person come back to life. And he said that, look, dry bones, hear your Lord. This is the sovereign Lord says to these bones, I will make breath into you. So it's like telling them that now that these bones have decayed, that now that they have just rotten, when the command of God will be there on the day of judgment, you'll just need to say one word, and those bones will be back in their order, and the whole body would be recomposed, and then people will rise again and face their reckoning. So one of these very important areas that as faith we continue to stumble is the question of how at all is life after death possible. The Quran here has actually demonstrated, and this, if you remember and recall that I gave you this example earlier on, I referred to you the fact that as far as this example is concerned, this is the example of God guiding people from darkness into light. So the previous example of Abraham and Nimrod was God taking away people from light to darkness. So there were people, I mean, Nimrod was a person who had taken to arrogance, who was who thought that he himself is God. And for such people, there is no guidance. But for people who would really like to know how life and death is possible, this observation of the prophet Ezekiel is depicted in the Quran. And as I said, a similar passage is also found in the Bible, in which people who are genuinely intrigued by this question of life after death, they were guided. And this is how, in spite of that curiosity that they have, that curiosity was not bordering on any denial. It was not that they were rejecting. It's only something that they wanted to know to reassure their hearts. And the Almighty says, for such reassurance in the times of His prophets, in the times when revelation comes, such great signs do accompany prophets of God, because they have to convince the people who have given up to slumber. And we do remember and we do know that the Israelites, for so many years, I mean, it's like 2 millennia almost, that they broke the covenant of God time and again. And one of the things that they would always say is that how can we just be raised to life once again? And life is all that there is, and there is going to be life. And they knew that they were the progeny of Abraham, and they were the progeny of an illustrious prophet, and they thought that they would be delivered. So this is how the Quran has answered them. And then وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ قَالَ وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي قال فخذ أربعة من الطير فسرهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعوهن يأتينك سعيا واعلم أن الله عزيز حكيم. And in this regard, that incident should also be kept in consideration when Abraham had said, Show me, Lord, how will you raise the dead? How will you raise the dead? He replied, Do you not have faith? Do you not have faith? Yes, I do have faith. This is what Abraham said. Yes, I do have faith, but just want to fully reassure my heart. Said Abraham. God said, Okay, take 4 birds, then tame them to yourself. Tame them with yourself. Then after slaughtering them, place each of them on every hill and then call them. They will come back to life and will swiftly run towards you for the future. Fully understand that God is mighty and wise. So this is another example. And the purpose of this directive was that Abraham should clearly recognize them as the ones whom he had slaughtered and placed on the hill. So it was not that he was doubting God, he just wanted to reassure himself. The Quranic words are لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. So the question was that, don't you believe that I can bring the dead to life? And Abraham replied, Well, I do believe, O God, but I just need to have that comfort of heart, that reassurance that is going to be my beacon in light, and I can guide other people as well. So the Almighty actually gave him this directive that he should slaughter 4 birds, and then he should also make them accustomed to him. They are very used to him, and then place those slaughtered birds on 4 different mountains, and then call them out, and they will rise from the dead and will come running towards him. So it would be that as soon as people wake up on the day of judgment, they will remember the details of the worldly life that they had spent, so much so that tame birds would recognize the voices of their masters the way they used to in their previous life. So this is the example of how people, when they will be brought back to life, they will recognize their own deeds. They will recognize their own doings, just as tame birds would recognize the voices of their masters with whom they spent their previous lives. So whenever he wants, as the Quran says, he would bring back people to life, and would definitely do so because his wisdom entails it. The Quran says, Wallahu Azizun Hakim. Now these 2 attributes of the Almighty, they are worth giving attention to. Aziz is powerful, Hakim is wise. Powerful means that no one can stop him from bringing people back to life. There is no one who has any authority. He will do what he wants, but then his authority is also governed by his wisdom. So this wisdom entails that people be brought back to life, and this bringing back to life of the people should be for the purpose of their own reckoning. People who live the life of a righteous person in this world would be rewarded, and people who do not will be punished. This is what the wisdom of the Almighty entails. So this brings us to an end to this section of verses, and before we start off the literal translation and idiomatic translation of these section of verses, if you have any questions up till now, please raise them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Imran, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Thank you very much. Sorry, I joined a little late, but I've got a couple of questions. The 259, the verse where we talked about, the prophet Ezekiel, as mentioned in Bible. And thank you very much for these quotes. Maybe another time I'll ask how to find these. But what does Bible say about, the Quran's claim that the Jews believe Uzair as the son of God? Because some of our translators and the tafsir writers, mufassirs, they've written that this is referring to Uzair, which is now being questioned in this day and age. So the first question is, when Quran says the Jews believe Uzair as son of God, who is the Quran referring to? And the second question is for the following verse, which is 260, that do you think that the birds, like some of the translators, they write that the birds were cut into pieces and then spread out on the top of the hills, whereas like Maulana Farah, he just says that the birds were just spread on those, and when he called, they just flew in. So thank you.
Right. So, as far as the first question is concerned, although it's not discussed here, it's discussed in the ninth surah of the Quran. And yes, it is Ezra, the prophet, who is discussed, and the Quran calls him as Uzair. And the fact that Uzair or Ezra was regarded to be the son of God is to be understood in the Arabian milieu. So remember, it's not that all the Jews who inhabited the earth at that time had this belief. It's only the Arab Jews who held this belief. And just as the Christians, of course, Christians held this belief worldwide. So they believed Jesus to be the Son of God. And this was not just the Jews who lived in Arabia. This is like all the Christians. But in the case of the Jews, this was just one faction of the Jews. I mean, the faction which lived in Arabia was the one who regarded Ezra to be the Son of God. So people who today critique this, they should know that the Quran is not claiming that all Jews wherever they are, they regard Ezra to be the son of God. It's only the Jews who lived in Arabia. And precisely because of this, when the Quran raised this objection, there was no counter objection by the Jews telling them that, well, we don't believe in Ezra as the son of God. We are we just believe in one God. So that question was never raised. And we know from established history, basically, that it was just the Jews of Arabia who believed so. So, as far as the second question is concerned, the word juz'a clearly tells us that they were slaughtered. I mean, it's not just these birds were placed, the live birds were placed, because in that case, the word which is used in the Quran is summa jal ala kulli jabalim minhunna juz'a. You take each part of these birds which have been slaughtered and then call them. So they will unite in the form of a bird and then come to you. So basically, the words of the Quran are absolutely clear that when this is something to be done, it is not just that these birds were placed as living birds on different mountain tops. And of course, the example itself would have been meaningless, because the example which is brought here to the fore is that people when they die and they become, I mean, dust and decay, they will be raised to life again. So remember, the context is that the day of judgment, people will see them being relived, or sort of being given new bodies. So the context also occasions it, and the words themselves clearly tell us that it's not living birds that are under question. Birds here have been slaughtered, and then they will, I mean, in spite of the slaughter, they will come back in the original form and then run towards him, and that is what has happened.
Thank you. Just a clarification on the first thing. In your studies, have you seen that? I haven't found it. But I just wanted to know if you know if there's an evidence somewhere in Bible or somewhere that Quran is referring to the only Arab Jews in Medina or in Hijaz that
Yes,
held that
there is
belief.
a reference. You see, the Bible, the way it was compiled is, I mean, it's not talking about the way it has preserved itself. Is not that all of its contents are preserved. We just cannot, I mean, be safe in this assumption that whatever it houses, whatever it contains, is the complete content of what God revealed to them. Because this is something which is a given. On the other hand, the way the Quran is spoken of Uzair is very clear. It says these Jews. So the words are قالت الأزير ibn Allah. I mean, قالت اليهود Uzairu ibn Allah, which means that these Jews say, which of course refers to the Jews of Arabia, that Uzair is the son of God. So the Quran uses the alif lam of Ahad, which tells us that not all Jews, but these Jews which are right in front of them, are the ones who are under question.
I see, but not from their books. I mean, that they don't have those in their books,
Yeah,
right?
at the moment, I mean,
Yeah.
today's Old Testament has no such reference. But as I
I
said,
see.
I mean, it's not essential, because we know that many parts of the Old Testament have been lost to posterity,
Yeah.
and there was one time, and in fact, this is one of the historical incidents which is mentioned, that it was in the times of Ezra that the Bible was or the Old Testament was rewritten, and many parts of it were lost, and Ezra actually wrote it down from his own memory.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
Uh, so, sir, this ayah number 259.
Mm-hmm.
The Arabic says "Wanzur ilal izami."
Hmm.
So it is kind of starting in the middle, saying "Wanzur ila himarika." Look at your donkey,
Hmm.
and then it says "Wanzur ilal izami kaifa nun shizuha."
Hmm.
The typical translation that I've seen, and this is what I used to think, that this ayah is talking about how this donkey will be coming alive, and how this donkey's bones will be resurrected and flesh will be put on them. But look like the way you're describing it is saying that no, these izam, these bones are bones of some other people, some other corpses that were there, and their bones is what Allah revived, not just the donkey. So what's the basis
No,
of translating this as?
I mean, it's not the way. I think if I translate it again, it is Wanzur ila himarika. Himarika means your donkey. It
Right.
refers to your ass. It's not the people. I mean, it's not that the people are brought to life. It is Wanzur ila himarika wali naj'alaka ayatal linnas, and how we make you this sign for people. So look at your
Right.
ass. wali naj'alaka ayat. Wanzur ilal izam. Then you look at his bones, the bones of that donkey. Kaifa nunshizuha. How we clothe it. I mean, how we add substance to it. And
Okay.
I mean, all this is referring to the donkey itself. It's not to other human beings. Kaifa nunshizuha would mean that we observe how we raise the bones and observe how we raise the bones. And then it says, Summa naksuha lahma. And then we put flesh on those bones. So
Okay. So
basically,
all
it's
of
the
these
donkey
are
under question.
right. So all of these are still referring to that donkey, because the
Of course.
passage about Hiskell that you showed from the Bible, that was talking about some hundreds of people who were getting
No,
resurrected.
actually, you see, that is why I said there is a similar passage. It's not exactly the same passage.
Okay.
So, I mean, there is a similar story which has the same, I mean, same background, the same purpose, the same lesson, but the individual characters are different. Of course, in the case of the Bible, there is a human being involved, but here there is an animal involved. The thing is the same in both cases. In this particular case, you see what the example is that he is being told, the person who's observing all this is told that look, that your own food has not rotted. Your food and your drinks are exactly the same. But a life that was besides you, a donkey who was besides you, has just rotted away, and now we are bringing it back to life. So basically, he was made to observe how a living being who had died is now brought back to life through God's command.
Right. And it was not just he, but other people also witnessed the same. It was not just the prophet Hiskell, but other people also witnessed the same.
Yes, but that is why the Quran says, "Lil-naj'alaka ayatal linnas," so that we make you a sign for other people.
Right.
So this incident took place for just one animal, but because people saw this, so it was a sign for others as well.
So this leads me to my second question. Why do we today do not see such signs? Is that because
Uh,
he's
I answered
uh,
this question when I was describing this. That you see, it is only in the times of the prophets of God, which is the prophetic era. You must have read this word a number of times in the Quran, that whenever the Almighty sends his prophets, He sends them with bayinat. The word bayinat is used copiously, abundantly in the Quran whenever prophets are sent. So special signs are sent with these prophets of God, so that the people who are around them, they have an extra vision, they have an extra assurance under to them that yes, they are talking not to an ordinary person but to a prophet of God. And that is why these signs are reserved for the prophetic era. In the prophetic era, there are you see angels. I mean, the Quran has used this word for in the Battle of Badr, that there were people who were fighting beside the Sahaba and they did not know him, but of course it was God's angels. He sent down 3,000 of them, and later on their number increased to 5,000 and they struck the disbelievers. So you see, all these happenings, they are part of the prophetic era. And that is how the Almighty works, that in His own prophetic era, when messengers of God are given a certain mission, of delivering the truth and then punishing people for their disbelief, then it's not just they who are doing it. Remember, it's God's mission that they are completing. So at every step, you have God's help, not hidden help. It's like openly you can see God's help. And that is what actually brings people to that level of faith that they become partners to or companions to prophets of God.
Shabnam, please go ahead.
थैंक यू मरियम सर थोड़ा स्ट्रेंज सा क्वेश्चन है सर बिल्कुल शुरू में तो आयत पढ़ी कि हजरत इब्राहिम का नमरूद के साथ जो डायलॉग था सर जब उन्होंने कहा कि मेरा खुदा सूरज को मशरिक से लाता है तुम उसको मगरिब से ले आओ सर दिमाग में जब भी मैं ये आयत से गुजरती हूँ मेरे ज़हन में ये बात आती है कि नमरूद कैसे एग्री कर गया कि हाँ तुम्हारा खुदा ही लाता है he didn't believe in God और ये कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं था कि एक क्रिएटर है जो सब करता है तो वो he could have said कि भाई वो तो खुद ही आता है और शायद सर कहा भी जाता है कि वो खुद सूरज को भी पूछते थे और वो खुद को सूरज का अवतार मानते थे तो ये सब साइंटिफिकली भी हमें लगता है कि चीजें खुद ब खुद हो रही हैं तो हाउ डिड ही एग्री कि हाँ ये मतलब कैसे मान गया वो या हैरान हो गया क्यों नहीं कहा खुद ही
You see, you know that then things happen in a court of a king. It's not that he's alone with Abraham. There were people who were on looking. They were seeing what would be the result of this debate and discussion. So if Nimrod had snubbed Abraham, it would have gone against his own favor. And people would have, yes, this could have been like a thing that a king could have done, and people would have said that, well, he snubbed someone. But remember, Abraham himself was a person who was well respected there, at least, and the courtiers knew, and Nimrod also knew that if he would snub Abraham, this would not win him the day. He needed to have that argument develop between him and Abraham so that he could give an answer to him. So basically, it's the fact that you're not alone when you are snubbing someone, and that is going to go in your favor. When you know that there's a group of people watching you, they would like your leader to win the debate in a way that is befitting for that leader. Otherwise, it would just have been a snubbery.
सर अल्लाह कुरान तो कह रहे हैं ना कि फबुहत कि वो हैरान रह गया मतलब कुरान कोट कर रहा है कि वो एक्चुअली हैरान रह गया कि
so you see he didn't know that he didn't know that Abraham will bring such an argument that he would have no answer to it. So you see, he was basically inebriated in his power. He thought that there's nothing who could stop him, and we know from certain incidents that killing or not killing someone was absolutely his prerogative. He would kill innocent people. He would let the people who are guilty live. And this is what he said, that, well, it's my authority whether I make someone live or whether I make someone die. So he was in this state of mind. And he knew that Abraham would have no answer. Because you see, he was in that frame of mind. He never knew that he was facing a prophet of God who would ask him such a question that he would have no reply to. People who are arrogant, they become overconfident.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Actually, following up on Shabnam's question real quick, why couldn't he then request Ibrahim alayhi salam to have the sun rise from the other side too? Because then the proof should lie, or the burden of proof should lie on Ibrahim alayhi salam.
You see, Abraham never said that he's acting alone. He said that he's a representative of God. He is a representative of God, and God is doing this. This is understood in the whole incident that this is a happening that's been going on for centuries. That sun is always rising up from the east. So that is something which made the Nimrod absolutely dumbfounded. He didn't think that, well, if something is going to be, if the law is that I have been asked to reverse the rise of the sun, I should do the same for my questioner as well. So you see, this is something which never made him confident enough to come to this question, because he knew that for God, this was a common happening that has been happening for centuries, and this is what he's doing. And Abraham presented himself as God's representative, not as a person who's going to control God. So he said that my God does this. If you're a God, why don't you do this? So for a person of Nimrod's stature, this was enough. Had he asked the same question back to Abraham, and Abraham would have done what would have said, he would have further feared him. So he didn't have the guts to ask this question, because that was enough humiliation for him, that he was not being able to answer what he had said initially. So a counter question is something which never occurred to him, simply because of the humiliation that he had suffered. And for example, even if that counter question could have occurred to him, the thing is that one thing would have still been clear, and that is Nimrod did not have the power to bring the sun from the west. So he at least could not have been called God. So you see, this was sufficient for him.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. That's such an interesting thought process. Bismillah, Ahmed, please go ahead. Imran, please go ahead.
So, Dr. Saleem, just a quick question of Ibrahim alayhi salam. One question is why non-Muslims are not allowed to enter the house that he built or the city that his family established, which is Mecca in particular. And then the destruction of the idols, according to some scholars, it was a command given to Ibrahim alayhi salam solely. That was something specific to him. And anyone in this day and age who tries to imitate that is basically not following Qur'an. Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
So you see, as far as your first question is concerned, everyone has the freedom and choice to go and visit the Kaaba, the house of God. Today, what we are facing is not what God has said to us. Basically, it's the interpretation of the Saudi authorities, which is their interpretation, that they think that people from other religions cannot enter the holy Kaaba. And personally, I don't agree with this interpretation. Anyone can come and visit the house of God. It's open to all. And as far as the second question is concerned, breaking the idols, you see, regarding the land of Arabia, there was a special command, and that is that this is a land in which nothing but Tawheed will remain supreme. So this was like a model center for the rest of the earth, that as long as it lives, polytheism will not survive here, cannot thrive here, in fact. So all the rest of the world, you can have temples in Muslim countries. You can have all sorts of worship areas, but this is specific to the land of Arabia. The land of Arabia has been made a center of monotheism, and it's like a model center, so that people from all over the world know that this is what pure monotheism is. And it is here that the Ishmaelites were given charge as the last community of God, and as the progeny of Abraham. Before this, the same status was occupied by Palestine, by Canaan. So in Canaan also, the rule was the same, that no idols would exist there. And we know that the wars that took place there over a number of years were wars which took place between monotheism and polytheism. So there also, it was purely one land. In the first instance, it was the Israelites who were selected for this purpose, and they were told that they will be nourished in this land of Palestine, which is a land of monotheism. Once they lost this position, it was given to the Arabs, and for them, the law was also that now this is the center of monotheism. So this is a specific scenario, and this cannot be repeated in any other Muslim country. So in all Muslim countries, you can have Hindu temples, you can have other temples which have idols, but this is just for Arabia, because the Prophet has said this and the Quran has said this.
Right. So I understand actually that Prophet Muhammad, that's why he destroyed all the idols in Kaaba. But why did Ibrahim alayhi salam destroy it in Iraq, where he was, where Namrud was?
So that is another thing. See, that has nothing to do with the destruction of polytheistic creed. That was just a ploy, a methodology that he adopted, not for the purpose of preaching, but to make them understand that these idols, they cannot even defend themselves. So he was not destroying idols per se so that people should not worship them. This was not his purpose. His purpose was just to demonstrate that these are defenseless objects that you're worshipping. That is what he stated actually. When he was asked that who did this, instead of saying that I did this, he said, "Bal fa'ala kabiruhum." It is the bigger one who has done this, and why don't you ask him? So basically, the purpose of destruction of Abraham in his times was not destruction per se, the way idols were destroyed in Arabia. It was just for the purpose of demonstrating how defenseless idols are.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. Jazakallah khair.
Bismillah Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
So, two quick questions, Dr. Saleem. Assalamu alaikum. My first question is that, it was Ezekiel who had the donkey, it seems, and it was Abraham with the birds. And in both these instances, Abraham was told to get familiar with the birds, and Ezekiel owned the donkey. Does that mean that when we die, we will be reunited with our families? Is that an indication of that? That it's because everybody seems to be familiar with each other, the birds and the humans or the prophets. Is that how we should interpret it also?
No, basically, the interpretation is life, the possibility of life after death. All the rest are details. The basic
Okay.
reason that both these anecdotes have been recited in the Quran or narrated in the Quran is to tell us that life after death is not an impossibility. In the case of the birds, Abraham was told that, well, you can do them the way you would like to. You can cut them into pieces, but they'll come to you as if they knew you before you even slaughtered them. They will remember you. This is like an assurance being given to Abraham. And in the case of the donkey again, it was that the fact that he had thought that, just a couple of, moments had passed, whereas the Almighty said that 100 years have passed. Your drink and your food are the same, but your animal is gone. He's totally dead now. So basically, both these examples are meant to portray the fact that, well, life after death is not an impossibility before the power of God.
Okay, so from this we can't interpret basically that, when people say that once we die, life after, will we be united with our families, in the hereafter?
That's another place in the Quran, in Surah Tur, which
Okay.
is the 52nd Surah. That is another
Okay.
instance in the Quran which tells us that not about hell, but definitely about paradise. It says that when
Okay.
people will go to paradise, they'll be united with their family, and
Okay.
their children will be united with their parents, and vice versa. So that is
Okay.
another instance in the Quran.
Okay, and then my second question was that after Namrud and Abraham had the meeting, did Namrud just let him go, or is it that this is the time when he put him in fire and it changed into a
Yes,
garden? That's the
it
time.
seems so. It seems so that when he saw this, that he had no answer to it, he took to this. He did not stand this humiliation, and he ordered for him to be thrown in the fire.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all of the on-topic questions. So I think we can continue, and then the off-topic questions we'll take towards the end.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with the literal and idiomatic translation, starting off with verse 243. ألم تر إلى الذي خرجوا من ديارهم وهم ألوف حذر الموت فقال لهم الله موتوا ثم أحياهم. Alam is not. Tara, you see, or do you not see? Ila, towards allazina kharaju, those who went out. Min, from diyarihim, their houses. So diyar is house, him is theirs. So have you not seen those who went out their houses, who were, and then it says wahum ulufun, wa and whom they ulufun. Uluf is the plural of alf, and alf means thousand. So uluf would be thousands. Aloof would be thousands. That look at those people. Have you not seen those people who took off from their houses, who were expelled, who went out of their houses, and they were in thousands. And what was the reason of this? Hazar al maut, for fear of death. Hazara means fear. Al maut is death. فَقَالَ لَهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُوا. فَقَالَ, therefore said, lahum, to them, Allah, God. So God said to them, and what did He say? Mutu, die. And I have explained already that here death does not refer to physical death, it refers to metaphorical usage of this word, which means that you are morally dead because of the cowardice that you have shown. So we know when the Philistines that they had attacked Israelites, instead of defending their territory, they just fled from their territory, and this is God's way of punishing them. And He said that, well, mutu, you die of metaphorical death. Summa ahyahum, summa, then ahyahum, God raised them to life. We know that this situation lasted for almost 20 years. And once they had revived because of their promise with God, they revised their covenant. God says, "Summa ahyahum." Then he revived them. Or the word would be uh, that he brought them back to life. And then it says, "Inna Allaha lazu fadlin al nasi walakinna aksar al nasi la yashkurun." Inna is indeed, Allah is God. Lazu fadlin means one who has blessings. Allah on an-nas people. So indeed, God is one who has blessed people, or who has shown graciousness to people. Walakin is but. Aksaran nas, most of the people. La, not. Yashkurun, grateful. But most of the people are not grateful. So what is said here is that God is very gracious to people, but the fact is that people are not those who express gratitude, or most people are those who do not express gratitude. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Wa and qatilu means fight. Fi in. Sabilillah, God's way. Wa and, or wa'alamu is one word you can say. Wa'alamu would mean you should know. Anna, that. Allah, God. Sameen, who hears. Aleem, who knows. So now the believers are being told, that the incident that had occurred earlier on, which was portrayed in the times of the Prophet Samuel, and we know that this incident had taken place in which David had killed Goliath, and David was in the army of Saul, Talut, as the Quran says. So this is a past incident which was narrated earlier on, and now the past, after referring to the past, the Quran is now addressing the believers who are standing right in front of it, and it's saying that you also fight in the way of God, and know that God is one who hears and has knowledge. Man, who. Za, who. They basically have the same meaning. It's like a double stress. Manzal allazi, who is that? Yuqrizullah, gives loan to God. Yuqrizu, to give loan. Allah, God. Qarzan hasana. Qarzan hasana means a goodly loan, something which is given in a generous way, something which is given in a wholehearted way. So the verse would mean that who is it who can give a loan, a goodly loan to God? Fayuzaifahu, so that God increases it manyfold. Yuzaifa means to increase something manyfold. Lahu, for that person. Az'afan kasira, many times. So yuzaifahu, if you take the whole expression, the construction would be fayuzaifahu az'afan kasira. So lahu is just something which has been juxtaposed between these two words. Otherwise, the construction is fayuzaifahu az'afan kasira lahu. So God would make it manifold for that person. In other words, that the loan that you give to God is going to be returned to you manifold. That's what the implied meaning is. Wa and Allah, God. Yakbizu means to give less. Wa and yapsutu means to give more. Wa and ilayhi, towards him. Turjaun, you shall be returned. So idiomatically the meaning would be, and God gives less and gives more. Wallahu yakbizu, wallahu yabsutu. Wa ilayhi turjaun, and towards him shall you be returned, and you shall have to return to him one day. Alam tara ilal bana'i min bani Israila min ba'di Musa. Alam, did you not? Tara, see. Ila, towards. Al-mala, leaders. Mim, from. Bani Israel, the Israelites. Min ba'di, after. Musa, Moses. So, idiomatically it would mean, have you not seen the leaders of the Israelites after Moses? Mala is leader. Min Bani Israel, from the Bani Israel, from the Israelites. So have you not seen the leaders after Moses, who lived after Moses, from among the Israelites? And what is that? Is qalu linabiyyin, when they said to their prophet. Is when qalu, they said, referring to the Israelites, linabiyyin, to their prophet. And we know that prophet in those times was the prophet Samuel, who lived around 1000 BC. Lahum, to them, ub'us lana malika. When you read it like this, lum hubus lana, it would mean raise for us, give for us, or send for us. And what should they send? What should he send for us? Malika. Malik is king. Nuqatil fi sabilillah, so that we can fight for the path of God. Nuqatil, we can fight. Fi, in. Sabilillah, the path of God. So what has happened is that they said, when they said to their prophet, is qalu linabiyyin, when they said to the prophet, is qalu linabiyyin lahum baslana malika, that can you ask, they asked the prophet of theirs that, can you appoint a king for us? Ub'us lana malika. Can you send a king for us, or can you depute a king on us? And why should that be done? So that we can wage war for the cause of God. And then he replied. Who replied? Samuel the prophet. Hal asaytum in kutiba alaykum al-qitalu alla tuqatilu. Hal asaytum would mean what if. Hal asaytum, what if to you, in, if kutiba is ordained alaykum, on you, al-qital is battle. So he said that, okay, let's assume that I'm going to appoint a king on you. Then will you fight if battle is made incumbent upon you? Kutiba alayhim would mean become incumbent. Al-qital, battle. And hal asaytum in kutiba alaykum al-qitalu alla tuqatilu, which means that if war is made obligatory upon you, mandatory upon you, alla tuqatilu, will you not fight? So hal asaytum in kutiba alaykum al-qitalu alla tuqatilu would mean that if war is made compulsory upon you, will you not fight? Qalu, now they replied, وَمَا لَنَا, what is it to us? Why is it to us? Allah, that we not, nuqatila, fight, fi, in, sabilillah, the way of God, وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا, whereas we have been expelled, min diyarina, from our homes, وَأَبْنَائِنَا, and from our children. So their reply is that why would we not fight? Because we have been expelled from our homes and from our children. Alamma kutiba alayhimul qital. Therefore, lamma, when. Therefore, when. Kutiba, ordained. Alayhim, on them. Al qital, battle. So when battle was ordained on them, tawallaw, they turned away. Illa qalilam minhum, except for a few among them. So the thing is that when the prophet asked him, or asked them, that will you fight for the way of God if battle is made compulsory upon you? Their reply was that why we would not fight? Because we have been expelled from our homes and from our children. We would definitely fight. This is what they replied. But when battle was actually made, or war was actually made incumbent upon them, when they were asked to wage war, falamma kutiba alayhimul qital tawallaw, they turned away. Illa qalilan minhum, except a few of them. So except a few of them, all of them refused that we are not going to fight. And then Allah says, Wallahu alimun biz-zalimin. Wallah, and God, alimun, is knowledgeable, biz-zalimin, about these unjust. And God is aware of these unjust people, so they should know. And this is an expression, dear viewers, which when occurs in the Quran in this way, it actually connotes the consequence. When it is said, Wallahu alimun biz-zalimin, that God knows these unjust people, it actually means that God will now deal with them in a way that behooves him regarding the break of covenant that these people are guilty of. So when I say I know you, it doesn't mean, it does not stop here. It means that now that I know you, I'm going to deal with you in a manner that you are worthy of. That is what is implied here. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. And Qala said, lahum, to them, nabiyuhum, their prophet. So their prophet said to them, in other words, Samuel said to them, inna, indeed, Allah, God, kad, indeed, again, asa, appoint, lakum, to you, or on you, talut. Talut is Saul in the Hebrew Bible, but it is Talut in the Quran. They are the same people. Malika is king. So their prophet said to them that indeed God has now decided to appoint Saul as king on you, Talut as your king. So it was on their insistence that ultimately the Almighty yielded and said, okay, now he is going to appoint a king on you. And this is Samuel conveying the will of God, Samuel conveying the intention of God that in Allah qad ba'asa lakum taluta malika, indeed God has appointed a king on you. Alu. Now it is once again their reply. Anna yakunu lahul mulku alayna. How can he be made a king on us? Anna, how? Yakunu lahu, for them, lahul mulku as the king, alayna upon us. So how is it possible that he be made a king on us? For nahnu, whereas we, ahakku, we are more suitable, bil mulke, towards sovereignty, minhu from him. Walam, whereas yukta, lam yuta would mean not given, sa'atam, abundance, min al mal, from wealth. So they objected that how come that you have made him a king upon us, whereas we are more worthy of being made the king. And the reason for that is walam yu'ta sa'ata min al-mal, because the king that you have appointed is not rich at all. He is a poor, I mean, he belongs to a poor tribe. So lam yuta would mean not given, sa'ata min al-mal, abundance in wealth. So the Israelites actually objected when the king was appointed on him over them. So remember the king Talut, he belonged to the Benjaminite tribe, who was the weakest tribe amongst the Israelites. So first of all, they asked God that a king should be appointed. And when God did appoint them the king, they said, well, why did you appoint a king from a poor tribe? And the words that they use are, Lam yu'ta sa'ata min al-mal. He has not been given abundance in riches. Sa'a, abundance. Mal, riches. All. Now God's replies, or Samuel's replies, Inna Allah astafahu alaykum. Indeed, God, his astafahu, has chosen him, alaykum, on you, wa, and zadahu, increased him in abundance, zadahu bastatan. And what is that abundance? Fil ilm, in knowledge, wal jism, and in physique. So his reply is that God has chosen him over you. God has chosen him over you, and for this purpose, zadahu bastatan, given him abundance in knowledge and in physique. So you see, in the tribal areas, or in the tribal kingdoms of the past, two things which made a person perfectly eligible, or in fact the most eligible to become the king, was to be a person who has a tall and a strong stature, a well-built physique, and a person who is very wise and knowledgeable. So God's reply was that you don't look at that he belongs to a poor tribe. If the Benjaminite tribe is a poor tribe, that is not the criteria. I have appointed someone who is a very strong, who has a very strong build and who is very wise. So the words are, Inna Allah astafahu alaykum. Indeed, God has chosen him above you. Istafa means to choose. Who? Him. So God has chosen him alaykum, on you. Wazadahu, and given him abundance. Zadahu would mean increase. Bastatan, in abundance. So he has increased him. He has increased him in his basta. Basta means capacity. So increase his capacity, fil ilm wal jism, both in knowledge and in wisdom, and in physique, sorry. Wa wallahu, and God, yukti, gives, mulkahu, kingdom, man yasha, to whoever he wants. Wallahu wasi'un alim. Wallahu, and God, wasi'un, which means that God is great, is beneficent, and alim, he's knowledgeable. So his reply is that God gives his kingdom to whoever he wants to. Of course, implying the fact that his blessing someone with wisdom or endowing someone with wisdom is also based on his own knowledge and wisdom, because this is what he is. Wallahu wasi'un alim, he is munificent and he is knowledgeable. So if he has appointed someone for this purpose, then remember it is because of God's wisdom and his knowledge that he has done so. وقال لهم نبيهم إن آيات ملكه. Wa and qala said lahum to them, nabiyuhum their prophet, inna indeed, ayatan sign, mulkihi his sovereignty or his kingdom, and that ya'tiyakum will come to you at tabut the ark. So now it is said, وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ their prophet said to them, their prophet Samuel said to them, who are them? The Israelites. And what did he say? Inna ayata mulkihi, the sign of his kingdom, or the sign that he will become the king, or he has become the king. And what is that sign? Is an ya'tiyakumut tabut, your ark will, the ark will come to you. Ya'tiyakum, come to you. Tabut, the tabut or the ark. And what is that ark? Fihi sakinatum min rabbikum. In it is tranquility from your Lord. Sakina is tranquility, comfort. Min rabbikum, from your Lord. Wa and baqiyatun, remnants. Baqiyatun is remnants. Mimma, from taraka, left. Alu Musa, the family of Moses. Wa alu Harun, the family of Aaron. So in it is comfort, in it is tranquility from your Lord, and in which there are remnants, in which there are remnants from the family of Moses, or what the family of Moses has left behind, and the family of Aaron. So basically, it is being said that the ark will come to you, and that ark is a source of tranquility for you from your Lord, and the ark will house relics from the family of Moses and from the family of Aaron. And what will and how will it arrive? It says, "Tahmiluhu malaika." Tahmiluhu, it shall be carried. Al malaika, the angels. So that ark will be driven by the angels, and it will come to you and come to the Israelites. Inna, indeed, fi, in, zalika, it, la ayatan, a great sign, lakum, for you, in, if, kuntum, you, mu'mineen, believers. So in this, there is a great sign for you if you are believers. In other words, what is being said is that the return of this ark to you, which had been taken away by the Philistines, and it's like being returned to them, is a great sign. And this sign is the appointment of Talut being appointed as their king. So remember that this was the Qibla, or this was the Tabut or the ark which they would face in their wanderings in the desert in Sinai. So basically, it was their Qibla. They would face towards this, and they would offer their prayer, and it had great reverence, but it had been taken away by the Philistines. And it is now said that it will be brought back to them. And this is how it will be brought back. So I'm going to stop here, the literal and idiomatic translation. Inshallah, we'll continue in our next session. And if you have any questions up till now on any of the topic that we have studied, or any out of topic questions, you can raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
Sir, if we read Ayah 246, in this ayah, I'm seeing 4 instances of the word qital or nuqatil being mentioned. And
Right.
I think we say that quite a few times, that there is a difference between qital and jihad. Jihad has a much broader meaning, and it means to struggle in the path of Allah. It does not always mean killing or militant action. And
Right.
when Allah says militancy, usually qital is mentioned. But I've noticed that you have translated, and also Hamdi Sahib has always translated in this ayah the word qital to jihad instead of qital.
Let me just, which verse are you talking about exactly?
246.
246?
Yeah.
246 says that Nabiyyun min Allah qad ba'asa lakum talut malika. So we don't have the word qital here in 246.
Let me check. Alam tara ila al-mala'i.
Yeah, so it's falamma kutiba alayhimul qital. Are you talking about this part?
Yes, sir. So wherever it says like iskalu nabi lahum waslana malkan nuqatil fi sabilillah, this is one example. Then
So
kutiba
you see,
alaykum qital.
yeah, I get your question now. You see, in the Arabic language, the word jihad and qital are used interchangeably, and the word jihad itself has a connotation which are basically two. One of them is just to strive for the way of God, as we see from the Quran. It says, "Wajahidu fillahi haqqa jihadihi," and regarding the Quran, it has said that this is the greatest jihad that you can wage is to by the book of God. Wajahid bihi jihadan kabira. So in the Quran also the word jihad is used for qital, which is an armed warfare, and for the struggle for the cause of God. So when Ustaz Ghamidi has translated the word jihad here, the word qital is, I mean, has been translated as jihad. It is basically in the meaning of armed warfare, because the word jihad actually also has this meaning. So the word jihad is used for a general struggle or an effort exercised in the way of God, and it is also used to fight for the way of God, to fight in the way we fight a war. So, because both these words are used here, so that is why he has used. Otherwise, a more accurate translation would be war, when war was made mandatory for them. But because the word jihad is also used for war, that is why he has used this word.
Right. So my point was, if we do try to do the same translation in English language and others, and then we keep saying that no, jihad and qital are two different things, it causes confusion. But I think I understand your point.
And I do understand your point as well, and I think I'll note it down. And I think I will revise this translation, and for future ones I'll substitute it to the word war instead of jihad, because it becomes clear that any other form is not being mentioned here. It's specifically an armed warfare which is being mentioned here.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
sir.
for that.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We have a question in the chat. This is off topic, and it asks, the person who's built up his, a lot of his business, so he's taken a lot of money and built huge buildings and bought a lot of vehicles, but by selling liquor or taking bribes, and then he repents to God after that. What happens to his property? Does it become halal or haram?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part. What happens to him?
To his property? So does that become halal or is it still haram?
For the heirs?
They don't
For whom?
specify. They don't specify, but they've basically built up their entire business by selling liquor or taking bribes, and so they have a lot of property from all of this.
I mean, you see, assets do not become halal or haram. What the use of those assets is something else. So you see, if you're living in an asset which is built out of illegal money, unless you realize that, I mean, how can someone make you realize that? Yes, that is an illegal asset that you are owning, but that's a realization which a person should have. So the question can either be that what should the heirs do with such a property, because the person who's living in that property, he has no qualms, he's not worried about that. He know that he's earning illegally, and if the structure or the house or the whatever the property is has been built through illegal means, it's not a problem that he perhaps has in his mind. The problem could only be with the people who might be his heirs, and they should think about something different. So, I mean, it depends what the direction of the question is.
So they're clarifying now that that person uses this property still as a legal property, and he's living in it and using the vehicles that he got with that kind of money, but he's repented to God.
Well, it depends what his repentance or the nature of his repentance is. Then, if he can maybe give in charity an equal amount, that is one way that can salvage his himself. Other than that, if he's not in a position, maybe if he repents, it depends if God will accept it or not. Because you see, the repentance which God tells us is acceptable to God is regardless of whatever you have done. The words of the Quran are "Illal tabu wa aslahu," which means that you must repent before God and set right anything that you have done wrong. So that setting right of wrong is something which is contingent on circumstances, contingent on a person's situation. The ideal part would be to just, give it away, or have it replaced or give an equal amount in charity. And if this is something which is not possible because he has only this asset and no other asset, then maybe do other good deeds that could compensate for that and sincerely repent before God. Basically, you see, it's like trying to make up for that bad deed. So, whatever best way possible you can compensate for that evil that you did in your previous life is what is warranted and what is recommended.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. For the participants, we have a lot of questions, so please keep your questions very concise because we're running very short on time. Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead. And only ask one question, please, at a time.
Dr. Shehzad, a man is supposed to be the head of the family, the Qawam. If the husband is not earning anything, and if the wife is earning, can she become the Qawam? And if she can, would it make any difference to her inheritance?
You see, the Quran has specified two reasons for making the husband the head of the family. It's not just earning. That is just one point. The words of the Quran are الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم, which means that as husbands have been appointed as the head of the family, the first reason for that is بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض, that they are more appropriate physiologically, physically, mentally to serve this job, to discharge this responsibility. And the second is that they are liable to earn for the family. So earning for the family is just one part of the reason that husbands are made the head.
But then if he's not earning and she's the earning member, it makes no difference.
As I said, that doesn't matter because you see, the Quran does not say that the person who earns becomes the head. This is not what the Quran says. The Quran says the husbands are appointed as the heads because they have fulfilled two statutes. One of them is that they are liable to earn, and the other one is God has made them suitable for this purpose.
And inheritance still remains half of the husband.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing will change.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Siobhan Ansari, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, इसमें ये जो आपने यकबिजु व यबसतु रिस्क के बारे में था, ये किस उसमें था आया ये? मतलब
Wallahu yaqbil. No, that is basically regarding. Let me just look at it again. I think it occurred right after the appointment of Saul.
अच्छा, जिसमें वो कह रहे थे कि ये माल में कम है.
Yes. So basically, yaqbizu wa yabsutu would mean that if he has little wealth, it doesn't mean that he is not suitable for this position, because the eligibility for such a position is zadahu bastatan fil ilmi wal jism, that a person is wise and a person is physically appropriate for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Imran, please go ahead.
Dr. Shehzad, my question is about the Bible talks about the I forgot where it is exactly, but as long as the ark remains amongst the Jews, that they will not be defeated. But then the question is, how did the temple got destroyed twice? And I know that Sumerians, I think, was the first one, and but the Nebuchadnezzar is the one, I think, who took the ark with him. So just
the Assyrians. The Assyrians.
Oh, they took the ark. Okay, so the Bible says that it was a punishment because they killed. I mean, I know they killed Prophet Zechariah and his son, which is John
Yahya.
the Baptist later on.
Yeah.
Yes, Yahya alayhi salam. So, but can we say that does the Bible say that they were punished because they were killed, and that's how the second temple was lost? But why the first one lost, and why did they lose the ark?
Exactly the same reason. If you study Surah Bani Israel, the Quran has actually charted out the whole chart sheet. It has laid down the whole chart sheet that they were given this responsibility, and they broke the covenant of God. They indulged in polytheism. They did all sorts of things that they were stopped from doing, and as a result, all this happened. So if you look at the appropriate verses of Surah Bani Israel, you'll find out the details being mentioned there.
I see. Thank you. So basically, they lost the ark because of their breaking the covenant, and then of course, they kept
It
getting
seems so,
destroyed.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jazakallah.
Bismillah Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
So, Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. We've had
Right.
two deaths in the community on Wednesday. One, a 94-year-old, and another 28-year-old boy. It was a sudden death.
Oh, very
How
sad.
do you explain to the children today? All the kids are going for the funeral for the boy, and the entire community is completely devastated. How do you explain it? Because there's so many people just standing there asking so many questions, and one
Mm.
is just lost. You don't know how to
Well,
respond.
actually, this is a more philosophical and a detailed topic that the Quran has touched upon on numerous occasions, and it is said that this is a temporary life. God is going to take away this life according to His wisdom. At times, He takes away 6 months old babies. At times, stillborns. At times, people who are just entered their adolescence. At times, people who grow old. So there's no rule of God that He's going to just take away people who grow old. He takes away people. He gives them enough respite in this world in which they can earn good for themselves. And the wisdom of why God takes away young people has been mentioned in Surah Kahf. One of the things that have been mentioned there. And if you look at the appropriate verses, you'll find out that Khizr alayhi salam, he actually, who was an angel of God, he took the life of a young boy. And when Moses asked him that, well, you took away the life of a young boy when he was not guilty of any crime, why did you do that? And Khizr told Moses that the reason for that was that this boy is going to grow up and cause nuisance for his family, and he's going to be a big threat for his family. So God decided to take him away and replace him with another boy, and give them something better in return. So this is one of the reasons that has been lifted, or we have been informed of, that at times what happens before us looks to be an act of injustice or an act of oppression, but there is something good hidden in it for the people around it. And this is one instance which Surah Kaf portrays, that at times things, the way they happen, they might look unjust, but there is some good hidden in it, hidden in them for us, and we might not know at that time. So I'm not saying that this boy that you are referring to would have had the exact same situation, that had he grown up, he would have become, in more advanced in years, he would have become a nuisance for his family. There could have been other reasons as well. So you see, there is this wisdom of God which is involved in giving a person a longer life or a shorter life. And we cannot gauge that wisdom. So on one occasion, which I just mentioned in Surah Kaf, God has revealed or exposed the reason behind. There could be other reasons as well, just to let us know that you have to trust God's wisdom, that whatever happens is happening because of a plan. It's not a haphazard happening, and that you need to realize that someone's death not only is a incident which should shake you and remind you that people can die at any age, but also it is a reminder to the fact that God has not made a specific rule that only old people die, and death is something that can come anytime. And because death can come anytime, we have to remain prepared for death all the time. So it's like reminding people that that the preparation for death should be done every day. You just cannot know whether you're going to wake up the next morning or not. So basically, young deaths remind us of the uncertainty of death, and also remind us of the fact that as far as God is concerned, young or old doesn't matter. There are certain there is a certain wisdom behind each death, which at the time we might not understand, but if we are revealed the reason, we would endorse it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Really quick, short chat question. When it comes to women traveling without a mahram to visit families, there is a specific time limit that she can be on this travel if she's traveling without her spouse.
So first of all, this time limit, or this restriction is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran or Hadith the way we now understand it. It is not a rule of Sharia. In the times of the Prophet, it was like a precautionary directive given by him, because women would be looted and they would be molested. And as a result, the Prophet of God said that whenever you go for these longer journeys, don't go alone. Take some mahram relative with you so that he can protect you. So basically, these were protection or precautionary directives given by the Prophet. And if you now see that no such protection is required, like for example, if you are traveling by air or by any other means and you are perfectly safe, no such condition exists. This condition relates to the circumstances of the era in which it is given. This is the actual situation. But now what has happened is that the Saudi authorities or the rulers of the state, they think that this is not a precautionary measure, it's like an eternal measure. So, I mean, they have misunderstood this directive, and as a result, they have made it a permanent law. But I do believe, I have read somewhere that they have relaxed the law for elderly ladies or ladies who are traveling in a group, and they have reduced the age limit as well. So basically, it is their wrong understanding of the law that we are facing. Otherwise, as far as the Sharia is concerned, it is basically a directive given to every woman who is traveling that she should just think, I mean, she should make sure that the means of travel that she is adopting are safe. And I do believe that today, air travel and other forms of travel are pretty safe. And if they are not, of course, they should I mean, acquire some form of precaution. It's not just through mahram relative. It could be a guard. It could be anything else that could ensure their safety. So basically, it's ensuring the safety which is meant here to be followed.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Last question of the day, Jaka, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Assalamualaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Are you getting me, sir?
Yes, I can.
Sir, I have a question. I raised a question. I sent in chat box. My question is that if a person collects illegal money through illegal ways, either in the sort, either in the shape of bribe or any other illegal way, what about that property? Is it become halal or legal or illegal for him?
I think I just answered this question earlier on.
But I did not get it, sir, clearly. What is the crux of this?
I mean, what exactly is the question? Because you see, there's no question about the fact that it is a property built out of illegal means.
Yes,
but the question is, what should be done with that property? I said that, well, the best way would be to give charity of an equal amount.
Sir, the person is residing in that very house, and he is owner of several vehicles. He's using the same.
Well, as I said, I mean, he can reside in that property. That living or not living in a place is not halal or haram. The thing is that he has earned something which is, I mean, he has earned a stigma for him. He has earned something of a bad deed for himself, and he should compensate for that. And the best way to compensate for that is either he pays an equal amount in charity, or he sells off these belongings and give them to charity. And I mean, charity would mean, of course, that charity is something which he's not going to expect any reward for that, because in the first place they did not belong to him. So he has to compensate for that. Basically, I was referring to the manner of compensation, that things that he has acquired illegally should be legalized by doing some charitable work.
Sir, all of his property he should have to come. He should have to use in the charitable way.
As I said, it all depends on the circumstances. Maybe he is not in a position to dispose it off because he has no other means to live. In that case, he should repent before God and live the rest of his life in a way that he should spend as much as possible in the way of God. It all depends on his circumstances. As I said, the ideal way would be to dispose it off, but that is the ideal possible way. Less than that, there could be other means, because I mean, he could be not in a position to buy new property, and this is the only shelter that he has. So in that case, maybe repentance and doing other good deeds would suffice. So it all depends on the nature of that or the situation of that person. I just cannot give you a blanket answer unless all the situation is known.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. For the remaining questions, please hold on to them until our next week's sessions. And until next week, inshallah, see you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Saleem, again for an incredible session. And thanks to all the participants for coming through and asking great questions.